I never thought grief could taste so bitter. My name is Madison Carter, and on the day of my billionaire father's funeral, I learned that death doesn't only steal the ones we love, it exposes the monsters left behind. As the church bells tolled, my stepmother Vanessa stood at the altar, her black veil hiding a smile sharper than any blade. With trembling hands, she waved a will in front of hundreds of mourners and announced that my father had left her everything: his empire, his fortune, and the crown jewel, our $9 billion mansion. Then, as if the coffin behind her weren't proof enough of our loss, she turned to me and my brother Tyler and ordered us out of our own home. The crowd gasped. Tyler's eyes filled with fear. But me? I laughed. Because Vanessa had no idea what secret that mansion was hiding. The church was cloaked in silence, heavy with the scent of lilies and wax from the tall candles burning beside my father's coffin. I stood stiffly in the front pew, my hands clutching Tyler's trembling fingers. My younger brother leaned against me, his knuckles white, his lips pressed so tight they had lost all color. He was only 21, far too young to stand in the shadow of betrayal, but here we were, two children mourning a father while watching his legacy stolen in broad daylight. Vanessa walked slowly to the podium, her black dress sweeping across the marble floor. She was beautiful, in a cruel, calculated way. Perfect blonde hair, a diamond necklace that sparkled under the chandelier, and crocodile tears that slid down her cheek but never reached her cold, glittering eyes. She sniffled into a silk handkerchief, then raised a thick envelope. The sound of paper against the microphone echoed like a thunderclap. "My late husband," she said, her voice breaking just enough to sound rehearsed, "entrusted me with his final wishes. In this document, signed and notarized, Richard Carter bequeaths his estate, his companies, his fortune, and this mansion to me, his devoted wife. I am humbled by his faith in me." A murmur rippled through the congregation. Some gasped. Others exchanged looks of disbelief. Tyler's body stiffened against mine, and I felt his breath hitch. "No," he whispered hoarsely, almost choking on the word. "She's lying. Dad would never—" I squeezed his hand harder, keeping my eyes locked on Vanessa. She wasn't finished. "From this day forward," she continued, her voice louder now, firm and commanding, "the Carter estate belongs to me. I will protect it, nurture it, and ensure Richard's vision lives on through my care." Her gaze swept the room before landing on me. The corner of her mouth curled into a faint, victorious smile. Then she pointed one manicured finger in our direction. "As for Madison and Tyler," she said sweetly, but every syllable dripped with venom, "Richard loved you both, but the future must be practical. You are no longer welcome at the mansion. The household will be reorganized immediately. Please respect his wishes." The words cracked across my chest like a whip. For a moment, the church tilted, the stained glass windows blurring in my vision. Tyler's knees nearly buckled. He clutched my arm, whispering, "Maudie, what do we do? She's throwing us out." "Behind us," guests muttered, scandal buzzing like wasps in the air. Some pitied us, others looked away, too cowardly to intervene. I raised my chin, forcing my lips into a cold smile. My heart thundered, fury burning in my veins, but I refused to give Vanessa the satisfaction of seeing me break. What she didn't know, what she couldn't even imagine, was that my father had been far wiser than she realized. He had left behind more than just a house or a fortune. He had left secrets, protections, truths hidden in places she would never think to look. So while my brother's eyes glistened with fear and the congregation drowned in whispers, I did the one thing no one expected. I laughed. The sound cut through the silence like shattered glass. Vanessa's smile froze, her eyes narrowing in suspicion. And in that moment, I swore to myself, she could wave her forged papers and lock every door in that mansion, but the Carter legacy would never belong to her. It belonged to us. As Tyler and I stepped out of the church, the cool Virginia air hit my face like a slap. Reporters waited at the gate, cameras flashing, their voices rising above the hum of traffic. "Miss Carter, is it true your stepmother now owns the estate?" I ignored them, holding Tyler's hand tighter as we pushed past the swarm. The black limousine Vanessa had ordered for us was nowhere in sight. Of course not. She hadn't arranged for our return, she had arranged for our exile. We stood abandoned on the church steps, our father buried inside, our so-called home stolen in front of us. Tyler looked at me, his eyes glassy. Maddie, do you remember when Dad used to walk us through the garden at night? The roses, the fountains. It never felt like just a house. It felt alive. His words pulled me backward in time. I could still see it, the Carter mansion rising from the hillside like a castle carved from light. $9 billion worth of marble, glass, and history. But, to me, as a child, it was never about the price tag. It was about Dad's steady hand on my shoulder, his deep voice reminding me, a home isn't built with stone, Madison. It's built with love, and it's your duty to protect it. I remembered running down the grand staircase, my shoes clicking against polished oak while Mom's laughter floated from the kitchen. I remembered Tyler at the piano in the music room, his small fingers fumbling at first, then soaring into melodies that made our parents beam with pride. That house held everything. The smell of Mom's perfume lingering in the halls, the echo of Dad's footsteps as he came home from late meetings, the crackling of the fireplace when storms battered the windows. It was a fortress of memories, a vault of love. And now Vanessa wanted to strip it all bare, turning roses into cold sculptures, family portraits into storage dust. She had no connection to that house. She hadn't bled for it, laughed in it, or cried under its roof. To her, it was a trophy. To us, it was our heart. Tyler's voice broke my thoughts. I can't lose it, matey. It's the only place that still feels like Mom and Dad. I crouched to meet his gaze. Listen to me, thank you. A piece of paper can't erase who we are. That mansion isn't just walls and windows, it's us, and I won't let her destroy it. His lips trembled, but a flicker of hope sparked in his eyes. We hailed a cab back toward the estate. As we approached, the mansion's pale stone walls gleamed under the sunset, tall windows reflecting fire across the gardens. For a moment, I felt the old warmth of home. But as the gates loomed closer, so did the shadow of guards in black suits. Vanessa had already stationed them there, like sentinels of her stolen kingdom. I pressed my forehead to the cool glass of the taxi window and whispered to myself, this is still our house. She can lock the doors, change the locks, even parade her forged papers. But, one day, Tyler and I will walk through those gates again, not as guests, not as strangers, but as rightful heirs. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror, confused by my quiet intensity. He couldn't know that I was already planning. Vanessa thought the funeral was her victory, but it was only the beginning of my war. When Tyler and I finally returned to the mansion gates, it no longer looked like home. The wrought iron entrance, once a welcoming arch to our childhood, had become a fortress. 2 security guards stood like statues, arms folded, eyes hidden behind dark glasses. I told them who I was, but they didn't even blink. Orders from Mrs. Carter, one of them muttered. Just like that, my family name meant nothing on the very ground built by my father's empire. Inside the gates, I could see movers unloading boxes. Curtains I had grown up with were being torn down. Gardeners dug up the roses Mom planted, hauling them into black trash bags. And on the steps, directing everything with her manicured hand, stood Vanessa. Madison, she called when she noticed me, her voice syrupy sweet. You really shouldn't be here. I forced a smile. Funny. That's exactly what I was about to say to you. Her smile faltered, but only for a moment. She descended the steps gracefully, her heels clicking against the stone. This is my responsibility now. Richard wanted me to take charge. I'm simply honoring his wishes. Tyler, standing beside me, clenched his fists. You're lying. Dad would never replace Mom's roses. He loved them. Vanessa crouched slightly, leveling her icy blue eyes with his. Oh, sweetheart. Those roses were outdated. This house needs a new vision. My vision. I stepped between them, my voice sharp. Don't you dare talk down to him. You're not his mother. From behind Vanessa, a younger voice chimed in. Chloe, her 17-year-old daughter, strolled out onto the steps, arms crossed, smirking. Looks like the princesses of the old regime don't like change, she sneered. Shut up, Chloe, Tyler snapped, surprising me with his sudden anger. Chloe only laughed. Or what? You'll cry into your piano until it magically solves your problems? Tyler's face burned red, his voice catching in his throat. I wrapped my arm around him, glaring at Chloe. You've been here 5 minutes and already act like you own the place. Newsflash, you don't. And you never will. Vanessa straightened, regaining her composure. That's enough, she said, her tone suddenly steel beneath the sugar. You and Tyler should accept reality. You've lost. The sooner you stop fighting, the easier this will be. I leaned forward, my voice low and steady. You're right, about one thing we lost, Dad. But we haven't lost this house, or our name, and one day, everyone will see through your lies. Her lips curled into a cold smile. We'll see about that. The guard stepped forward, signaling the end of our exchange. Tyler tugged at my sleeve, his body tense with fear and humiliation. I held his hand as we walked back to the car, but before I slid inside, I turned once more to the mansion. Movers carried out the last of Mom's antique vases, carelessly tossing bubble wrap over them. Chloe laughed at something her mother whispered, their silhouettes framed by the golden light of sunset. It wasn't just theft, it was desecration. I gripped the car door until my knuckles turned white. Let her play queen for now, I thought, because when her crown crumbles, it will crush her. And in that moment, I vowed, whatever it took, law, truth, or war, I would take back the Carter mansion. A week after the funeral, I told Tyler we were going back. Not to fight, not to argue, but to claim something of our own. I wanted Dad's watch, the leather-bound journal he always kept in his study, maybe even one of Mom's framed photographs. Just a piece of them, something to hold when the world felt empty. Tyler nodded reluctantly. What if she doesn't let us in? I met his eyes. Then we'll find another way. But I won't let her erase them. We drove in silence to the mansion. From the outside, it looked as regal as ever, the pale stone glowing in the afternoon sun, tall windows reflecting light across the lawns. But the warmth was gone. Guards in black suits patrolled the grounds. The iron gates, once open to us, now felt like prison bars. As we approached, one of the guards raised his hand. No entry. Orders from Mrs. Carter. I rolled down the window. I'm Madison Carter. This is my brother. We're here to collect personal belongings from our father's study. The guard didn't flinch. No exceptions. Tyler leaned forward. But that's our home. We grew up here. You can't just... The second guard cut him off. Step back, kid. It's not your home anymore. My chest tightened. I pushed open the car door and stood tall, every inch of me burning with anger. Listen carefully, I said, my voice steady but sharp. This house was built by Richard Carter. My mother's roses bloomed in that garden long before Vanessa ever set foot on this property. You don't get to tell me it's not my home. The guards exchanged a look, but didn't move. And then, like clockwork, Vanessa appeared on the steps, Chloe at her side. Madison, Vanessa called out, her voice dripping with false sympathy. I told you already. You and Tyler need to move on. Clinging to the past won't help. I clenched my fists. I don't want the fortune, Vanessa. I don't care about your fake will. I just want my father's keepsakes. His watch, his journal, Mom's photograph. You can't take those from me. She descended the steps, Chloe following with a smirk plastered across her face. Vanessa stopped at the gate, her eyes glinting. Everything inside belongs to me now. If you want something, you'll have to request it through my lawyer. Your lawyer? I nearly laughed. You're really gonna hide behind paperwork to keep a daughter from holding her father's watch? Chloe leaned against the gate, her tone mocking. Why don't you two just accept it? Dad didn't want you. He wanted us. Tyler gasped as if struck, his face flushing with humiliation. Before I could stop myself, I stepped closer, fire rising in my chest. Say that again, I snapped, my voice trembling with rage. Chloe's smirk faltered, but Vanessa pulled her back gently. Don't waste your breath, Madison. Go live your life. This mansion has no place for you anymore. The guards shifted, ready to close the gates. Tyler tugged on my sleeve, his voice breaking. Maddie, let's just go. I turned back toward the mansion one last time. My mother's garden was gone. My father's study, sealed. The house, our house, was slipping further from reach with every second. But as the gates clanged shut in our faces, I whispered under my breath, "This isn't over, not by a long shot." And for the first time, I saw Vanessa's smile twitch just slightly. She knew I meant it. The night after we were locked out, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, staring at the cheap lamp's flickering bulb, while Tyler dozed fitfully beside me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Vanessa's smug smile, Chloe's mocking sneer, the gates slamming shut. It wasn't just rage burning inside me, it was something deeper. A certainty. Dad would never have left us with nothing. The next morning, I called Mr. Sullivan, one of my father's oldest friends and business partners. He answered on the second ring, his voice low and weary. "Madison, I was waiting for this call. You know," I whispered. "You know she's lying." There was a pause, a sigh. "I can't say much over the phone. Meet me at Carter & Co., ATS, old headquarters, noon." When Tyler and I arrived, Sullivan was already there, leaning on his cane in the shadow of the marble columns. His face looked older, lined with grief, but his eyes burned with a quiet fire. He gripped my hand tightly. "Your father loved you. Both of you. Don't ever doubt that. And he didn't trust Vanessa. Not really. He suspected she might try something. That's why..." Sullivan glanced around before lowering his voice. "That's why he created a trust." I frowned. "A trust?" Sullivan nodded. "Months before he got sick, he asked his lawyer, Harold Green, to draft a confidential document. The mansion, most of the estate, he moved it into the Carter family trust. Its beneficiaries were you and Tyler." My heart slammed against my ribs. "So all this time, Vanessa's been waving around a fake will? Or one signed under pressure?" Sullivan said grimly. "Either way, it doesn't override the trust. If you can find it, if Green still has the records, you'll have proof." Tyler's voice trembled. "But why didn't Dad tell us? Why keep it secret?" Sullivan's gaze softened. "He wanted to protect you. He thought if Vanessa didn't know, she couldn't tamper with it. But she's clever. She fired most of the old staff, hired her own lawyers. I fear she might have tried to bury it." I clenched my fists, a surge of hope mixing with fury. "Then we dig it back up." Sullivan placed a hand on my shoulder. "Be careful, Madison. Vanessa won't go down quietly. She has money, connections, and she's ruthless. But remember, Richard trusted you. That's your strength." All as we left the headquarters, Tyler grabbed my arm. "Matey, if this is true, everything changes. She can't touch the mansion. It's ours." I stopped, turning to face him. "Not just ours. Dad built that house for Mom, for us, for the Carter name. Vanessa thinks it's a trophy, but to us it's sacred. And I swear, Tyler, we're going to take it back." Tyler's eyes glistened. For the first time since the funeral, he managed a faint smile. "Then let's fight." That evening, I called Green's office. The secretary hesitated before transferring me. When his voice finally came through the line, low and tired, I introduced myself. "Mr. Green, it's Madison Carter, my father's daughter." A long pause. Then a sigh. "Madison, I've been expecting this. Meet me tomorrow morning. There's something you need to see." As I hung up the phone, adrenaline pulsed through my veins. The pieces were falling into place. Vanessa thought she had locked every door, thrown us out for good. But she didn't know about the one door my father left open, the trust. And I was about to walk straight through it. The next morning, Tyler and I arrived at a quiet office building downtown. The brass plaque on the door read Harold Green, attorney at law. My palms were damp as I pushed the door open. This man had been my father's legal confidant for over 2 decades. If anyone knew the truth, it was him. Green was waiting behind a mahogany desk stacked with thick folders. His silver hair gleamed in the light from the window, and his sharp eyes softened when he saw us. "Madison, Tyler," he said warmly, extending his hand. "Your father spoke of you often. I'm deeply sorry for your loss." I sat down across from him, fighting to steady my voice. "Mr. Green, Vanessa claims she has a will leaving everything to her. But Mr. Sullivan told us about a trust one that names Tyler and me as beneficiaries. Is it true?" Green leaned back, tapping his pen against the desk. "It's true. I drafted the Carter family trust myself, under Richard's direction. The mansion and most of his estate were secured for you both. But, his brow furrowed. The original documents vanished from my records, months before your father passed. My stomach dropped. Vanished? You mean stolen? Green nodded grimly. That's my suspicion. Vanessa dismissed your father's loyal staff and replaced them with her own people. I wouldn't put it past her to intercept the trust files. Tyler's voice cracked. So, we have nothing? Green's eyes flashed. Not nothing. I always keep backups. I've been searching for them, but I'll need more evidence to convince a court. Witnesses, financial records, anything that proves Richard was coerced. I clenched my fists. Where do we start? That night, Tyler and I drove to a modest neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. Clara, our old housekeeper, had agreed to meet us at a small park. She looked thinner than I remembered. Her eyes tired, but they brightened when she saw us. Oh, my dears, she said, pulling us into a hug. I wanted to reach out, but Vanessa, she made it impossible. Clara, I asked softly, did you ever see her pressure my father? Anything unusual? Clara hesitated, glancing around as if the trees might be listening. Then she whispered, yes. A few weeks before he died, I overheard her on the phone with a lawyer I didn't recognize. She said something about making sure the paperwork is handled. Later, I found your father in his study, pale and confused, signing documents while Vanessa hovered over him. When I asked if he wanted water, she snapped at me to leave. Tyler's jaw tightened. She forced him when he was sick. Clara nodded. I believe so, but I had no proof. And when I confronted her, she fired me the next day. I squeezed her hand. Your words are proof enough, Clara. Thank you. Back at Green's office, we shared Clara's testimony. He listened intently, jotting notes. Then he said, we'll need more, perhaps from medical staff. It took days of calls, but finally, a nurse who had cared for Dad in his final weeks agreed to speak off the record. Her voice trembled over the phone. Your father was weak, sometimes barely conscious, yet Vanessa always brought stacks of papers, insisting he sign them. He looked lost. I doubt he understood. When I hung up, Tyler's eyes were wide with both fear and hope. That's it, Maddie. We're building a case. I looked at him, my heart pounding. No, we're building a war, and Vanessa has no idea what's coming. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and cold air conditioning, but to me it was the scent of battle. Tyler sat beside me at the plaintiff's table, his leg bouncing nervously. Across the aisle, Vanessa and Chloe sat in sleek black suits, their lawyer a sharp-jawed man named Whitaker shuffling papers like he was dealing cards at a rigged game. Vanessa's expression was pure serenity, a performance perfected. Chloe chewed gum with lazy defiance, her eyes locked on Tyler as if daring him to look away. I squeezed my brother's hand. Whatever happens, we fight to the end. He nodded, swallowing hard. For Dad. For Mom. When the judge entered, everyone rose. My heart thundered, but I kept my shoulders square. This was the moment we had been crawling towards since the funeral. Whitaker opened with a smooth, rehearsed voice. Your Honor, the evidence is clear. Richard Carter, a man of sound mind, left his entire estate to his wife, Vanessa Carter. The will is notarized, witnessed, and valid. The children, though grieving, are unfortunately misled by emotions. They wish to contest a document that represents their father's true wishes. He handed the will to the judge, who glanced at it briefly before setting it aside. Then Green rose, his voice calm but firm. Your Honor, what my colleagues across the aisle fail to mention is that this so-called will emerged only after Richard Carter's health deteriorated. We have multiple witnesses testifying that he was weak, sometimes barely conscious, and that Vanessa controlled every interaction during his final weeks. He gestured to me. My stomach flipped, but I stood tall and walked to the witness stand. Miss Carter? Green began gently. Can you tell the court what happened at your father's funeral? I took a deep breath. Vanessa produced this will in front of hundreds of people, claiming my father left her everything. Then she ordered me and my brother out of the house we grew up in. No mementos, no keepsakes, nothing. Just grief and humiliation. Gasps rippled through the gallery. I could feel Vanessa's eyes burning into me, but I refused to look her way. Green pressed on. Did you believe, based on your father's values and your relationship with him, that he would disinherit you? I steadied my voice. Never. He taught us integrity, responsibility. He always said the mansion wasn't about wealth, it was our family's heart. He would never give it all away to someone who married him late in life. Whitaker stood abruptly. Objection. Speculation. The judge nodded. Sustained. Stick to facts, Miss Carter. I swallowed and sat down, but my gaze met Tyler's. His hands shook, yet his eyes glimmered with resolve. Next, Clara testified. She described Vanessa's rage, the night she caught my father signing papers while barely awake. Then the nurse's testimony echoed through the courtroom like a dagger. He didn't even know what he was signing. For the first time, Vanessa's mask cracked. She shifted uncomfortably, her jaw tightening. Chloe leaned in, whispering something that made her mother's nostrils flare. But the turning point came when Green opened a small folder and produced a USB drive. My pulse quickened, I knew what it was. Your Honor, Green said, voice rising with conviction. This drive contains a backup of the Carter Family Trust. A digital copy kept on the company's secure servers, notarized and time-stamped before Richard Carter ever fell ill. Whitaker jumped to his feet. This is outrageous. Unverified, the judge held up a hand. We'll examine it. End of. The clerk plugged the drive into the court's projector. Words appeared on the screen. Carter Family Trust Agreement. Beneficiaries: Madison Carter and Tyler Carter. My breath caught. Tyler squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. The judge leaned forward, reading silently before speaking. This appears legitimate. Notarized, dated 18 months before Mr. Carter's death. Green's voice thundered. This trust supersedes any subsequent will, especially one created under duress. Richard Carter's true intention was to secure his children's inheritance, not hand it all to Vanessa. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Vanessa shot to her feet, her composure shattering. No! She screamed, her voice echoing off the walls. This is mine. Richard promised me everything. He loved me, not them. Her words sliced through the air like broken glass. Chloe tugged at her arm, hissing, Mom, stop. But Vanessa's fury spilled over, her mask gone. I stood, my own voice cutting across the chaos. You didn't just steal our father's house. You stole our last moments with him. You poisoned his final days with lies and greed. That's something you'll never wash off, Vanessa, not with all the diamonds in the world. The gallery murmured louder, some even clapping before the bailiff barked for silence. The judge banged his gavel. Order! Order in the court! He waited until the room settled, then turned his stern gaze toward Vanessa. The evidence is clear. The will you presented is invalid. The Carter Family Trust stands. The estate, including the $9 billion mansion, belongs to Madison and Tyler Carter. Tyler's head dropped into his hands, his shoulders shaking. I reached for him, pulling him into my arms. My own tears blurred the courtroom lights, but they weren't from grief anymore, they were from victory, from justice. Across the aisle, Vanessa collapsed into her chair, pale and trembling. Chloe sat frozen, her gum gone, her smirk vanished. As the judge's gavel struck one final time, I felt the weight lift from my chest. For the first time since Dad's death, I could breathe again. And I knew this wasn't just a legal win. It was a war won for Dad, for Mom, for the Carter name. The day after the verdict, Tyler and I stood once more before the mansion gates. This time, they opened wide. No guards blocking us, no Vanessa smirking from the steps. Only silence, and the creak of iron as the gates swung inward like they had been waiting for us all along. I stepped onto the stone path, my heels clicking against the ground I had once run barefoot as a child. The mansion loomed above, sunlight dancing across its pale walls. For the first time in months, it didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like home. Inside, dust hung in the air. The movers had left half-finished boxes and broken memories. Mom's portraits had been shoved into storage rooms, Dad's study stripped bare. Tyler wandered into the music room, his fingers tracing the piano keys. A soft melody drifted through the air, shaky at first, then steady, filling the house with something it had been missing for far too long: life. I walked into Dad's study, my heart heavy. On the desk, hidden beneath stacks of discarded papers, I found it, his leather-bound journal. Inside were pages of notes, memories of Mom, advice for us, and one line written in his bold handwriting: "Protect them, always. They are my legacy." My throat tightened. I clutched the book to my chest and whispered, "I will, Dad. I promise." Tyler appeared in the doorway, his eyes wet. "So, what now? Do we live here again?" I looked around the room, at the cracks in the wallpaper, the faded carpets, the ghosts in every corner. "No," I said softly. "This house isn't meant just for us. If we keep it locked away, it'll rot with memories and pain. But if we open it, it can breathe again." His brow furrowed. "Open it? To who?" I smiled through my tears. "To the world. To kids like us who lost everything. To artists, musicians, dreamers who need a place to belong. We'll turn this mansion into something greater. Not a prison of greed, but a foundation of love. The Carter Foundation House." For a long moment, Tyler just stared at me. Then he laughed quietly, shaking his head. "That sounds exactly like Mom. She would have loved that." I nodded, gripping his hand. "And Dad too. He always said a legacy isn't in money, it's in what you give to others." Weeks later, the transformation began. The rose gardens were replanted, children's laughter replacing silence. We opened the library to the public, filled it with books on art and literature in honor of Mom. Tyler hosted music workshops in the Grand Hall, teaching kids to play the piano. I organized scholarships and leadership programs, carrying Dad's lessons of integrity and responsibility into every classroom we built. On opening day, I stood on the balcony, watching the courtyard below. Dozens of children played tag where Chloe once sneered at us. Volunteers painted murals on the walls. Tyler sat at the piano, guiding a little boy's fingers across the keys. The house was alive again, not with money, but with meaning. I closed my eyes and felt the sun on my face. In the breeze, I swore I could hear Mom's soft laugh, Dad's steady voice. "Protect them, always." I whispered into the wind. We did it. We kept the promise. When I opened my eyes, Tyler stood beside me, Dad's journal in his hands. He looked stronger now, his shoulders squared, his smile real. "We turned the mansion into something they'd be proud of," he said. I placed my hand on his shoulder. "No, Tyler. We turned it into something we can be proud of, too." And as the sun dipped low, casting golden light across the Carter Foundation house, I knew that no matter how much Vanessa had tried to steal, she had failed. Because wealth can be stolen, houses can be locked, but love endures. That was the real inheritance,